This pandemic has wreaked havoc on our finances. Many hardworking employees were forced to work part-time or got laid off. Some owners had to close down their businesses. Those who were hospitalized due to the coronavirus or other illnesses used up their life savings. Worst, the breadwinner died. So here are 3 practical tips in helping someone who has financial problems. My first tip is to find out if that person's financial problems is legit. As I've mentioned in my intro, this pandemic has detrimentally affected our finances. Yet, there are those who have acquired debts due to gambling, poor budgeting, or extravagant lifestyle. Hence, it's imperative to check if their story is legit or true. I realized this the hard way after being conned several times. I realized there are scammers who prey on kind-hearted people. I've grown wiser so as not to be fooled again by the same person or the same modus operandi. If, like me, you have been scammed before, let's not become too discouraged to help those who are truly in need. Allow me to share one incident that happened to me several years ago. While I was still working at UECP, the guard suddenly asked me to go down because someone needs a counselor. The guard was very alert. He won't allow strangers to go up. So I went down, and a distraught father in his 30s narrated the woeful tale of how his wife became insane upon learning that their daughter was on the verge of death. Of course, it was obvious he needed money for the hospital bills. Since I didn't know him, I wanted to check if his story is true or not. If true, I'll help directly by paying the hospital cashier. That way, the money won't be used for other needs. I told him that I'll visit his daughter that afternoon with a Filipino pastor. So, that same afternoon, we traveled from Binondo to Philippine Children's Medical Hospital, the one near Diliman, Quezon City. But we couldn't find the patient. So we even asked the registrar maybe the patient has moved or transferred to another room. But the name he gave us was bogus. We tried to call him up, but couldn't reach him. It's a good thing I didn't give him any money. So my friends, please find out if that person's financial problems is legit. My second point is to discern what is the best way to help. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 27 to 28 says, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to do so. Do not say to your neighbor, 'Go and come again tomorrow, and I will give it,' when you have it with you. For those who are sick, sending food or medicines to them would be a great help. You can team up with other friends so that it won't be too financially or physically taxing for you. For instance, when CJ Alvarez tested positive for COVID but had to take care of her own dad, who not only had COVID but who also suffered a stroke, her friends took turns in sending 3 meals a day to her family. Her good friend Michelle Silvano ran errands for their family. Other friends donated money. But of course, you have to ask permission first, if that person wants other people to know. And if that person said yes, then get their GCash or bank details so that the money directly goes to them. But there are donors who wants to remain anonymous. If that's the case and they're going to course the money through you, take a picture of that transaction and then send it to the donor and to the recipient. And afterwards, you also request the recipient to write a thank you note that you can forward to the donor. That way, you can also protect your reputation. Another way is to lend medical supplies, just like wheelchair, an oxygen tank, or maybe a hospital bed. So in 2015, we made plans to treat our parents to Japan, and that's our first ever family trip abroad. But a few weeks before the trip, my dad suddenly had to undergo an appendectomy and a gallbladder operation. The doctor permitted him to travel, but he cannot walk much, so he has to be in a wheelchair. So we didn't want to buy another wheelchair because my mom was already in a wheelchair, right? And my dad is only going to use it for the trip. So I just borrowed. And my high school friend, Hailey Sia, graciously gifted us one because she said they had an extra in their house. So you can see this picture, like the four of us, just the one in black, together with Tina Lim and Julie Uy Ching Pua. And the other pics, of course, with her husband, Kelly Sia, and with our other high school friends. So you can see from our pictures in Japan, even though both my parents were in wheelchairs, they are very, very happy to be able to make that trip. So thank you to the Sia family. And afterwards, since we don't need it anymore, I also got her permission and we donated it to the church, to UECP, so that it would help other people. But what if that person wants to borrow money? Then you ask why he or she would need it. Find out if it's true and only lend the amount that you can. Please do not borrow money from others just to help that person, or you will end up in debts in case that person can't pay you back. Years ago, somebody wanted to borrow 30,000 pesos from me. I turned her down because I don't know her that well, and I heard that she's been borrowing money from others. Moreover, she borrowed a book from me, but she never returned it. I'm not the type of person who would hound after somebody because of a book, but this book has sentimental value. So once in a while, probably once a year, I would remind that person, can you return that book to me? But she never did. So if she can't return a book that costs around 1,000 pesos, how can I expect her to pay me back 30,000 pesos? On the other hand, there was one time I lent a good friend 30,000 pesos. A few of his customers weren't able to pay, and he said he needed the money to keep the business running. He was like a younger brother to me, and I trusted him. So I lent him the money. True enough, he paid me as soon as he got the money. Since I'm not rich, that was the last time I lent someone that much money. If the need is valid, I usually just give a small amount to help that person and tell that person that he or she doesn't need to pay me back, and they can just pay it forward and help other people in the future. So you can also help by supporting deserving students through scholarships or giving them allowance. Or you can encourage that student to apply for scholarships in schools, associations, or big corporations. Hans and I support 2 street kids from Visions of Hope. So you can also course through that. Like this t-shirt that I'm wearing, it says, every child needs a child champion. So I hope that you would also be a child champion and would support kids who really deserve it. And we'll put the number of Zara May below and you can contact her directly. But if that person is still young but just plain lazy, the admonition in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 10 says, if a man will not work, he shall not eat. So in cases like that, don't only give him a fish. Teach him how to fish. Challenge that person to look for a job or online jobs. Upgrade his skills. That's what Pastor Ezekiel Nieto and Jaylene Malto did. 4 years ago, they fed and tutored the children of low-income communities. But after 2 years, they realized that instead of helping these people, they were making the people of the community depend on them. So they created the Zoe Eco Farm in 2019. They taught the members of the community the proper way to culture mushrooms. One of their products is mushroom chips. And it's a healthier way to snack, right? And they also produce skincare products made of mushroom. So you can check out their Facebook. Okay, we'll also put the link below. My third tip would be to share budgeting tips to someone who has financial problems. And here are some practical tips on how to save and spend money. Live within your means. So based on your income, allot how much you would spend on food, rent, water, electricity, etc. Learn to live simply so as to cut down cost. Only buy essential things like food. Don't buy things you don't need. Just like a new cell phone, when your old cell phone is working properly. Don't buy things using credit cards or loans. Because if you don't have the money to pay during the due date, it will yield high interest. So let's say for me, I only have one credit card, and I always pay on time, and I paid it full. That way, I don't need to pay the interest. Because there was one time I forgot to pay, and I was shocked to see that the interest is so high. I called the company up and then requested them to waive the penalty fee, because I said I've always paid on time, and they graciously did. So to make sure that I always pay on time, I put it in my calendar that monthly on a certain date I have to pay my credit card bills. Another tip would be to save on electricity, like you turn off the switch once you leave the room. And to save on water, you close the faucet while applying soap, whether you're washing your hands or taking a bath. And of course, we have to save money for emergencies. So you make sure that you have to set aside a sum of money that you can save every month. And if you want to know more on how to have a debt-free lifestyle, avail of Dr. Andrew Lewson's book for free. The only requirement is that you promise to read that book within 5 months. And you can also request copies for your friends. Just contact Miss Mel. I'll put her number below. Just indicate your number, your name, how many copies you need, and also the names of your friends. Of course, you have to pay for the courier. So my friends, the 3 tips on how to help someone with financial needs. Number 1 is to find out if that person's financial problems is legit. Number 2, discern what is the best way to help. Number 3, share budgeting tips.